Okay, welcome everybody.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
We're not live yet. It's setting up for YouTube, and I've got to put in the
Okay.
description.
Because it came across here saying that we were recording to YouTube. It says we're live.
All righty, everybody. Here we are. Go on. EJ, back to you.
All right. Welcome to Mental Health Awareness. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode on September 25th, 2023. This is another episode of the JAWS Coffee Chat with Jennifer A. Whitaker and our host, C-Snaps. Of course, I am Elizabeth Oberkirsch of OMI Admin Services. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media pages, our groups, our YouTube channel, or wherever it is that you came across us and found us. We also want to give a special thanks to some great folks who are replaying our shows on their platforms. That would be Marcus Hart of Transform You Media, Zach Clayton of the PAC Channel, Jay Stoyan of the Disability Channel, and Lawrence Wingate of Wingate TV. We definitely appreciate their support and participation. And before we get started on today's conversation, we just want to mention our sponsor and express our gratitude for Stanley, who is supporting our podcast this month. Please be sure to check out their website and see what all they have to offer, gifts for others and for yourself. Thank you so much for your support, Stanley. We'll have more about them later in the show, but now let's get the show on over to Jennifer and C-Snaps. Take it away.
Sorry. Speaking of Stanley, can we have the link so everybody can see it? It does not show in our description.
I will get that for you.
Sounds good, everybody. You'll see the Stanley link soon in the description any minute now. And be able to show your appreciation and support to JAWS Coffee Chat through checking out the Stanley link. And now back to you, Mayaka. And what's in the show for us today?
This week, I want to do some highlights from the book Boundaries. And right here, I have the workbook. It was a really good book, and I believe it is a great companion to learning about boundaries. If you don't know how to set them, this book by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, which is titled Boundaries, When to Say Yes, How to Say No, to Take Control of Your Life. These are great companions for learning about boundaries. So let's get into it. Today, we want to talk about boundaries. So what does a boundary look like? The definition of boundary is a line that marks a limit of an area or a dividing line. The book gives a great illustration about property. So think about your boundaries as a beautiful house that you have, and it is fenced in with a gate. So the boundary is the fence and the gate. And so at the gate, you can either let good in or let bad out. So those are what happens. That's what happens when you have boundaries. So you're going to either let good in or let bad out. A boundary is something that differentiates you from someone else or shows you a beginning or an end. So let's look at one boundary that they have in the book, and that is our skin boundary. So we are in our own skin, right? So let's say that for the sake of this, that our skin boundary is our family hugging us and giving us kisses and all the wonderful things that we as children love to receive. And some adults still love to receive those gifts. But then you have, so we enjoy those touches. We're happy to see them, everything there that are within those situations. And so that's our skin boundary in a healthy state. Now let's look at our skin boundary when it's violated. That's when someone touches us inappropriately, or we've been through some trauma or abuse. Then that's how someone abuses our skin boundary and violates the boundary that we have set for our skin. So now that boundary has been crossed. It doesn't feel good. It makes us sad. It sometimes puts us through counseling, all those different types of things that we experience. Another boundary is our words boundary. And I think that this is one of my favorite boundaries, because how often do we mix up our words? So I feel like a lot of people can get these mixed up because we don't let our yeses be yes, and we don't let our no's be no's. And then we sometimes have those situations where we honestly just don't know the answer. So we're confused ourselves. Do we say yes? Do we say no? Is this the right answer? Is this the wrong answer? So when we don't let our yeses be yes and our no's be no's, then we have situations of confusion. So that's when the words boundary is definitely one of the easiest boundaries to cross. In that when we say our words, then we don't necessarily mean them, or we do mean what we say, I would say, but we don't necessarily always agree with our yeses and nos, especially if it's a confusing situation. So from my personal experience, in this territory, it's an unsure category. So we need to make our yeses be yes and our nos be nos. And then our last go ahead.
But what I also think is not just our yeses be yes and our nos be no, but if it's like you were saying it's in the I don't know, so I'm just trying to respond, to be prompt and upfront with the receiver to say, well, I'm not sure, can I think about that and get back with you?
Right.
Or can I research it and then get back based off what is needed between time and other information to give the answer?
Right. That's a good one, because too often we're like ready to, I guess we move in this fast-paced world, so we're kind of like popcorn. We're just ready to jump in.
Well, we want to answer it. We're eager to answer that something, especially when, let's say, there's money or some other reward involved, or we really want that reward really bad. Then we're more likely to whatever's the reward. If we want it bad enough, we'll say yes to something that really may not be best for us, or for different reasons it may not be the best. There may be something better, or it may be that we just don't need to cross that certain line.
Right. That's so true. I like that. we don't need to cross that line. So I find
like the idea of working isn't everybody. I mean, so many times at my gym I see people, so many women, they're stay-home wives, and they think that's the life. I don't have to work, I don't have to do this, I don't have to worry about money.
Yeah.
They like just being able to go spend their spouse's money having some kind of fun while the kids are at school, and the other person is, the spouse is at the job, and they're just splurging the money. I mean, it's kind of painted out to where everybody thinks the ideal thing is to go to college, get a job, get married, have kids. And some people have told me they get bored by hearing the same story.
Right. Yeah, I can see that.
But those are examples where whatever's the quote normal story was not right for those certain people.
True, very true. And as you can't make your story like other people's story. So that's good. I like that. And I find myself, especially with my words, sometimes I'll say things and I'll need to go back and look at that. And especially in my family, we have this tendency to want to say yes to everything, knowing that it's not within our limits to say yes to that one thing. And that's where we need to set clear boundaries about, okay, you need to know how to use that other word, which is the no.
Well, it's not just knowing how, it's also having the self-discipline to say no, and the self-esteem just to believe that just because you said no doesn't mean you're of less value. And kind of like, go along the lines of mental health. A lot of times people think that if they don't do what other people do, or if they uh, do what's to the best of their mental health um, well-being, that
Mhm.
they're being rude and it's unacceptable and it's just something they shouldn't do. But
Right.
with the idea of this one being about mental health, we need to do what's right for us, which, yes, we need to help others, we need to give to others, but we have to give to ourselves to be there to give to others. So in that case, let's say it was a workload for somebody who already has the maximum hours. They get a
Mhm.
new opportunity and they need to decide whether to go with the new or stick with the old, but don't overload themselves, right?
Right.
So that's a case of where you may have to say no to one and yes to the other, and other things like that. That's where no can be what's best for you, even though it may
Right.
not be best for, say, the client or the employer or whoever that it is that in that example offered you the chance.
Right. That's so true. That's a good point.
That's a very hard decision to make.
Very hard decision to make. Yes, that's something
It's
that
not
I hear
comfortable. It's not our
normal.
normal.
Well,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what I mean. That's why I say a lot of this of saying no when that's the best thing of setting our limitations is understanding it's not always selfish, because we have to take care of ourselves to be here for the ones that we do say yes for.
Right.
And
Right.
there's other things where people may find want to be there for all of these, how many people, so important that, like, a nightmare I had recently basically gave the idea that, according to an AI, that I feel like I'm delegating so much time to my business that I'm neglecting my personal hygiene or my personal
Mhm.
health.
Right.
It was a meaning of a dream that this AI interpreted.
Mm.
So there's even people of those kind of limitations that need to say, wait, if this AI is right, I need to do something to reduce my workload and to make myself a priority. In this case, the AI said about my hygiene. Okay,
Right.
so that's an example of where I in my day need to learn a priority that says, okay, just because it's a new client to our business, doesn't mean I need to take it versus put it on a waiting list and make time to hire somebody else to take it, or to just say, can we check back in with you in 6 months and see if we can work in our schedule at that point when we finish some of our current clients, projects, right?
Hmm.
But still to paint some kind of limitation, if not completely yes or no.
Right. Put on your oxygen mask first before you put on someone else's.
That way you can survive and save that somebody.
Right. So
But that's
true.
where I think the limitation could be a mix of yes and no in the example I gave, right?
Right. Yes.
But it still goes with the limitation idea.
Yes. We got to know our limits. Shockingly, they do talk about that, but I don't think I'm going to touch on that in this podcast. Okay. I want to do one more example from the book, and that was the perfect illustration, I think, of how to use our words boundary to get things across. But I'm going to go over to the time boundary now. And so, like the words boundary, our time boundary is also one of our biggest boundaries that we kind of overlook, because we often don't take the time out for a person or project that we usually don't have time for. So here's an example of a time boundary and how often we neglect it. So let's say we have a person from the outside coming to visit our house. So we'll probably ignore the door if we're not expecting them to come. Don't open it. Don't talk to them. They could be a telemarketer. They could just be a friend who dropped by. If we didn't know they were coming, then we're not going to answer the door. Versus, on the other hand, we're scrolling through Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We can name them all. And we're just flipping through, which that's not bad. I don't down social media. I actually love it. But how often do we use that time of scrolling and when we're supposed to be doing something else? Just like we are my favorite mom calls. And we want to talk all day long to mom, sister, brother, cousin. And 3 hours done passed. So that's how our time boundary gets easily overlooked or pushed back, because now instead of respecting our time and saying, I've set aside this hour and this hour to do this, I've actually not set aside time to do that. And I've overstepped that boundary by not having it on the schedule or not planning for it in advance and just going by the seat of my pants or the flow, I guess you could say, going with the flow. And so those are hard boundaries. Those are, some of the boundaries. I hit on two of the first ones, and then one that's in the middle of the boundaries that they kind of mention in the book, of examples of boundaries that are normal boundaries that we really don't think about, but they are there nonetheless, that actually do happen. And our boundaries, that's what's within our reach. Okay. So now.
Can I make a comment on what you've already spilled?
Yes.
So I was going to say, what's interesting is some of that, like the need for planning. A lot of people don't like to plan, but like what you're saying is part of sticking to a schedule is planning the what and when.
Right.
But then that ties into sticking with your boundaries and priorities. If I only have, let's say my work week, because you made me think of all the work I'm doing and how I'm basically overloading myself. So I see that I should only have 4 days that are, say, 1 or 2 o'clock through 6 or 8 in the evening. Depending upon what day, and is it tutoring or is it something I can do during the day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I should only have those full of what's work stuff. But how many times have I, like spiritually speaking, I have the Sabbath, and there was another business opportunity. I said, it won't hurt just to sacrifice one Thursday. But then it became a habit, right?
Right.
And then I have to step back and say, wait a minute, why did the above call me to take that day off? Because I see lower productivity, I see more stress, fatigue, all the reasons that we need that day to rest.
Right.
Whatever is anybody's religion, but the idea that we need that certain day to just lay low, sleep in, do relaxing activities, not go activities. Like so many times on at least the weekend for my family, which is why I choose for Thursday to be my resting day.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting things done, their personal obligations like groceries and all that stuff, right?
Right.
But that goes with, even though it's not work, drawing the boundaries of what hours, how many hours each day or week, planning it, and then like you said, the social media, sticking to it, don't change it.
Right.
So that integrates like all of that into like the self-discipline. You see where I'm going?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. So she was talking about self-discipline. And so it's definitely good to have the self-discipline, because a lot of times if we can't, they say your habits is what forms you. And I think we talked about habits a while back, not sure, but we might get into habits and talk about really what makes or breaks a habit. I know I was talking about how I use the Fabulous app. And one of the things that they start you out with is drinking water. And the water is not to force you to drink water every day. That's really not the point. It's to show you that you can create a healthy habit and stick to it. because it's a small thing, and they show you how to set yourself up for success. And that's really what you need to do. And a lot of times I find myself, if I can't set myself up for success, then I need to take a couple of steps back and then try to either do a new habit or look and see what I have on my plate. So yeah, I really, really like that.
Well, I think that's also not just looking at what I have on my plate or my habit, but sometimes evaluating it to say, what are, like with me and my schedule being so full, what are some things I need to clean up from my habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Habits that aren't as important or aren't big deals, like the example of social media. Okay.
Right.
So sometimes when I get these days to rest, I end up spending it on social media and I'm not really resting, right?
Right.
So those are examples of where we have to say, well, what can I actually keep my mind busy doing,
But is rest.
but let it rest?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say listening to music with my eyes closed or something, because it's relaxing music.
Right.
So sometimes we have to say, what do I need to change? Take away, not just add.
Right. To get that rest in. Yes.
And
so-
sometimes where takeaway means without replacement, because the example, reducing my load, right?
Right. So, yes. So my thing that I do is, that I used to do and I'm about to start doing is getting the massages. I can't go to a physical masseuse or anything like that. But you know the little vibrators that they have on that you can put on your back and things like that. And they sit them in the chairs and stuff. Those are perfect that you can do to just rest. And I like a heating pad. Some people don't like heat, some people like cold, but like taking those moments to relax and rest. And I do want to so get into coping. I think I repeat some of my things, but I love coping because it's important to take those rest moments. I won't get into rest, period, because I'll start preaching a whole message biblically about the importance of rest. But it is important to rest and to relax. We as mental health people, I find we're always go. And sometimes we don't know how to slow this brain down to actually take the time to rest.
But there's another key to it. The acknowledgement that with our mental health conditions, we require more time than normal people to rest our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes that can invade in our physical ability. Like with me lately, and some stuff that has happened within our company,
Mm-hmm.
that took so much stress and overwhelming out of me that
Right.
I didn't have the energy to go do my workouts at the gym.
Mm,
So in that sense,
right.
it invaded my physical body's energy,
Right.
even though it was a big overload in the brain. So that's sometimes
Mhm.
where we have to recognize that we have lower capacities.
Mhm.
Let's see how much stress we can handle and how much go. So often that's why we're the ones that are taught to cope, because we need more time to spend in a healthy escape, whether it's reading a book, listening to music, socializing with a friend, but coping, doing some kind of art or something that's healthy way to get away from your reality
Yes.
for a break.
Yes. So true.
Speaking
Many
of
people don't
which,
realize many
Oh,
people don't realize that we need it more, not less, and that it's not that we're lazy, but we're trying to take care of our minds.
speaking of which, that's the perfect segue into some information we can share about Stanley, our sponsor this month. They were founded in 1913 by inventor William Stanley Jr., and Stanley has been there for generations of adventures. They were built on invention, innovation, and inspiration with a timeless spirit that complements your wild imagination. So for over 100 years later, a steady stream of products continues to honor the Stanley legacy, keeping our warms warm and our colds cold. They have all sorts of products, mugs and camping gear and all sorts of different things. So Stanley is there for all your adventures so you can make the most of your world, whether you're scaling a mountain, camping out, or just climbing an elm tree in your own backyard. They'll be with you for your journey just as they have been for generations past, helping build a more sustainable, less disposable life and world while opening the door to an awe-inspiring future. So be sure to check out their website. It's in the chat now, but it is https://shop/it/lowercase b, 0, AY, and lowercase l. So that is in the chat and in the description of our podcast. So be sure to check out Stanley 19313. Back to you guys.
Absolutely love Stanley. I can never get enough of their water bottles and actually thermoses. Those are thermoses because they have, I know I grew up with them and they kept my cheerleading days warm, and cold.
Yes, definitely.
Love
and
them.
I love that a lot of them are stainless steel.
Yes.
So you can use my natural essential oils that have to be in the stainless steel so it doesn't pull the impurities out of the plastics. So the stainless steel is excellent for you.
Right. Love them. Okay. What's within your boundaries? So there are several things that are within our boundaries, but I want to touch on 3 of those things. So one of the things that are in our boundaries, I'm not going to go into this first one too detailed because we kind of already covered them, but it's our feelings. And I think we covered a lot of feelings last month, especially the negative ones that we always have. So our feelings are definitely one of our boundaries that we have control over. Another one is choice. Our choices are within our boundaries. And then the last one I want to cover is our thoughts that are within our boundaries. Jennifer actually mentioned one that is in our boundaries that we don't talk a lot about, which is our limits. I will not be covering that one today, but just know that your limits are important and that's also within your boundary. But these are the 3 that I want to cover. So let's get into our feelings. There are many different types of feelings that we have that are within our boundary. That we tend to either control or not control. So I guess my first question would be, what do you tend to do with your feelings? Ignore them or let them be in charge? And then why do you think you respond that way? Maybe that's too personal. Let's go with the first question.
I definitely don't ignore them. I wouldn't say I let them be in charge, but I do acknowledge them, and I tend to wear my emotions on my sleeve. So I let people know that that's what I'm feeling or what I'm dealing with. I don't think I let them be in charge so much, but I do make sure that they are acknowledged and that others are aware that that's how I'm feeling.
Right. Okay. So I know for me, it just depends on the day. Most of the time I ignore my feelings. And I don't really let them be in charge until I'm like a pop can or something. I don't know what they call those things, but like you shake me up and I'll pop. But most of the time I'm just holding the pressure in until that very last pop. And then it totally switches. All those feelings that I ignored, they're coming off on the top. They're in
You know what you
charge.
just basically explained? Why, when I get stressed, I get those times we've seen lately with John. So much is happening and not happening. And you know what we talk about each week on our team meetings or the Monday afternoon meetings, department meeting. And that I told you this didn't get done. And then now I got this and this. And so sometimes it's a matter of resetting the pace, right?
Right.
But that's what I see as my role with the example I'm giving in our company. But it's basically by recognizing the limit of everybody involved and not just my ideal speed, right?
Right.
And so that's sometimes where in business or even, whether we are a supervisor, we're a coworker, how we're working with other people, that sometimes we have to recognize other people's limits and not just our own limits.
Right.
And then to accommodate accordingly, like we know we're talking about at least 3 people, John being the third, that needs a reduction of what I assigned to them, that I need to recognize that, come with a shorter list. And that's me recognizing his limit and adapting to it. There'd be better profitability and better productivity as a whole, right? So I see us talking about our own limits, but then I see examples like that where in ways related to some kind of work we do, we need to adapt to other people's limits by first learning them. And that'll even make it better for ourselves. Like my example of stress, because I dumped so much on him, he doesn't get it done. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you did this. So by coping for him, I'm also coping for myself. Accommodating, I mean, but anyways.
Right. You're accommodating. Yes. I get that. Yes. I like that. So, and Jennifer does do a great job of looking out for how everybody is operating and feeling in the company. I like that about her. And it really helps out. It keeps us all united as a team. And so when you ignore your feelings or you downplay them, you have not acknowledged the fact that something happened or something is wrong. And you may feel different types of feelings that come up based off of the outcome that you ignored. So it's like feelings piling up on feelings. But then if you let your feelings be in charge, you're quite the opposite, because instead of your feelings piling up on feelings, then sometimes people tend to not want to be around you because they're always being dumped on. So it's good to find that happy medium between your feelings and not just dumping on each person. So we're going to take anger as our first example, as our example for feelings, because to me, that's the easiest one to see. And so when you are angry, you tend to act out in anger in some type of way. Some people do and some people don't. But those who do act out their anger in some type of way, they hopefully learn that there's an underlying problem to the anger. And so when you are at your anger point, it's all built up. And so you have to start, first you have all these emotions that have piled up, and then you got to start taking off the layer one by one by one by one until you get to the bottom of that big iceberg. And at the bottom of the iceberg is the initial problem that you started with, that had you dealt with it to begin with, then you wouldn't have all the other pile-ups and all the other anger to make you be angry. You wouldn't have the iceberg, and at the top of the iceberg, it wouldn't be anger because you would have dealt with the problem at the beginning. And we're about to get into how to deal with that.
Well, I was going to say what you just read basically explains where I was going in my last comment
Yeah.
with the example of putting too much load on at least realizing myself. But then as I realized it about myself earlier on in the discussion, I reflected and said, oh, half of my stress I went to delegating too much to one person. So I'm stressed because that person's capability doesn't meet what I want. That says, okay, I'm stressing myself out because from two angles, I'm wanting a longer list done than what, in this case, a 2-people team is capable of doing. So if I reduce the load to what we can do, I won't react with stress of why didn't you get, and then whatever, not done. Whether it's on myself because I get too tired and have to rest, or it's on somebody else. And I end up being irritable. But I saw that comes back to me having at root of my iceberg was too much expectation of myself and somebody else.
Right. So true. So yeah, I can see how you look at that and evaluate that situation. Another question to think about is, do you feel responsible for people's feeling, choices, or behavior? If yes, for which people in your life or situation in your life do you feel this responsibility? I don't think I worded that one right.
I
Let
was
me see.
going to say, I think that's not really a black and white picture. Like
Mm-mm.
people that have nothing to do with me, I don't feel a sense of responsibility. But where I got down to the bottom of the iceberg, I feel responsible for certain things related to my own behavior and also related to some other people based off, that what was the root of that iceberg. But
Right.
I wouldn't say that just because I meet somebody and they're having a bad day, that thing is my fault. So that's where I see it's a gray area because the person and the situation are independent to one another. It's not a really all one fits all.
Right. Yeah, I like that. So a lot of times it's because I've noticed that a lot of times when our boundaries are crossed, it creates what is called stress. And so a lot of times you need to ask yourself, am I responsible for this, or is somebody else responsible for this? And then if somebody else is responsible for this, are they taking responsibilities of their own actions, or are they trying to dump their responsibilities off on somebody else? So yeah, we tend to be responsible, or maybe we're not being responsible at all. Just because someone isn't responsible in their own life doesn't make you responsible for them. So are you responsible with your choices? How often do you use the phrase I had to, or she made me, or he made me, or when you explain why you did or did not do something? So, or just from our own personal perspective, how responsible do you feel like you are? Do you feel like people make you do things or don't make you do things? Sorry. Any takers or no?
Well, we are getting short on time now, but I feel like the typical person probably has a mix of answers. Because especially those that work for somebody else, it'll be boss said and made me whatever. And that's why they did it, because they didn't want to lose their job. And then I see other
Exactly.
people or just other areas of the same person's life that is, well, I really wanted to something, but there's no boss or anybody to make them do it. So especially those who actually work for some kind of authority as opposed to being self-employed, I see them being predominantly a mix. And then many people who are self-employed may see some kind of feel like they have to or should or somebody else made them because, they wanted that business deal. Like my example was some of my students, I've got some tutoring that's beyond my limitations. Well, I wanted to make that money. So they asked, so I have to kind of attitude, right? But that goes back to the discernment and deciding for ourselves what's best for us and drawing the boundaries.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Oh, go ahead.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for it today. We may have to continue this conversation a little bit further on another show. Jennifer, do you have any announcements of things you want to bring up to our listeners today? As she looks through her notes, because she always has something going on, be it another book that's coming out or another podcast she's working on. What you got for us today, Jennifer?
The Project Die Hard Monday mission is coming up in November 6th. We'll be going live. We now have a particular page on jensbooksandmore.com, JENNS books, ANDMORE.com, or the longer URL you see in the description, Books and More by Whitaker.com. And if you go on that page, you can go to the products menu and see Project Die Hard, click on it, and you'll find that now you have a way that you can actually fill out a form. It's a PDF, put your information as to why you want to be on Project Die Hard's podcast, or you can sponsor Project Die Hard to help service veterans from that same page of our website. And if you go there and you want to be on the podcast, fill out the form, the PDF, read the about us, email it to Monday at projectdiehard.org. That's Monday at projectdiehard.org. And other people on the team will schedule to discuss if you're fit to be on the podcast. And it could be as soon as November of 2023 when we have you live and ongoing from there. So that's one thing. We are looking for both sponsors that to monthly sponsor at minimum of $22 a month, in addition to guests to be on the podcast, which we want at least 2 guests per episode, which will be every Monday. We also have new services that will bring bank breaking profits into your company or your MLM or any other kind of product or services that you want to get out there, get known, and market. And we're going to have those added to our events as well as products page within the next week or two. And that'll be one way to get your company, your podcast, or whatever you offer to the world out there, known, and to also be a support of the Jaws Coffee Chat podcast. Possibly even if you do the sponsoring using our Patreon link in the description, you could also vouch about it on our podcast, depending upon which subscription you get to support us. The higher levels do get 1 or 2 shows per year that they can appear on for sponsoring us monthly. And we've got some other new products and services coming out. So be sure to stay tuned, watch all the shows, hear the announcements, and take action. Back to you.
All right. Lots of stuff going on in the neighborhood. So let's see. We definitely want to thank everybody for joining us today, either on our live show or in our recordings if you're watching this afterwards. Our next episode of Mental Health Awareness will be next Monday, the 2nd of October. Same time, same channel. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or whatever page you came across us, and check out our website. All that information is in the description and in the chat. So until next time, we like to wish you a productive and enjoyable week. Goodbye. Take care, everybody.
Last note, everybody, C-Snaps will not be here for a while. So say your last thoughts to her and be sure to message us. Leave a comment in YouTube if you want to pay her a thanks and goodbye. But for now,